I remember when I was little, I was swimming at the public swimming pool, and there were so many kids that hot summer day. I wanted to go into the deep part of the water like my friends were, but I was not a very good swimmer at the time. But as the day wore on, I couldn't help myself, and so I scurried along the wall to the deep part of the swimming pool. And I was just like holding on to the ledge, like there's a little lip along the wall. I was just holding on, and one of the guys dove into the water with a cannonball splash. And I slipped, and I started to sink in like a rock. I mean, I was just like, I was flapping around under the water, and I'm yelling, and bubbles are coming out, and nobody could hear me, of course. And I remember thinking, like, how is it possible to drown with so many people around? The lifeguards are not going to see me with so many kids everywhere. And I remember thinking, this is going to be so embarrassing to die in front of all my friends. And just then a hand reached down and grabbed me. And it was a friend of mine. His name is George. And he just pulled me up. And he pushed me towards the edge of the pool. And he just kept right on going like it was no big deal. He kept playing in the water. And I looked back, and I lost him in the crowd. There were so many kids, as I said. And I went to the shallow part. I stayed there the rest of the day. I was so scared. And I made up my mind. I vowed that I was going to become a better swimmer. And sometimes life is like that, where you feel like things are going well, you're hanging on pretty tightly to things, and all of a sudden, things take a turn for the worse, and we feel like we're suffocating. We start to feel desperate. We start to feel like we're all alone, like no one is listening when our cries of desperation, and it's just like bubbles coming out, and no one hears. And all of a sudden, our faith in God seems to sink like a rock. And we're going to see today what God is doing in those times when it seems like God has forgotten about us. We're going to see in the Gospel of Luke, we've been going verse by verse through the Gospel of Luke, and we've come to chapter 4. And this story takes place on the Sea of Galilee. And now this body of water is the lowest freshwater lake in the world. It's like a valley between two hills. And when the cold wind comes rushing in, it mixes with the warm air of the lake, and it can create some very severe thunderstorms even to this day. So as we dive in here in Mark chapter 4, Jesus was in a boat by the shore. The crowds of people had become so big, word had spread that Jesus was healing everyone who they were bringing to him, and they were clamoring to see him and to touch him. And so the best way to teach without distractions, and so that the crowd wouldn't crush him or his disciples, was to teach from the boat right there on the water by the shore. And so we pick it up here in Mark chapter 4, verse 35. It says, "On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, 'Let us go across to the other side.' And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?'" So let's pause here for just a bit. As the sun was starting to set, Jesus told the disciples to go to the other side of the sea, which means that it says here that, notice in verse 36, it says that they took him with them in the boat just as he was, means that he was exhausted. They launched out onto the sea. Jesus went down to the bottom of the boat, and he was out. He was in such deep sleep that even a storm didn't wake him. And we catch a glimpse here of Jesus' human nature. He was fully God, he was fully human all at the same time. This is the incarnation. This is the second person of the Trinity, how he became a man. The Creator stepped into his creation. And part of that creation now was whipping up a terrible storm at sea. And so we see here right away that even when we're doing what Jesus tells us to do, storms can come. Storms can come when we obey, and storms can come when we disobey. Kind of like if you remember the Old Testament story of Jonah and the big fish. Jonah ended up in the middle of a storm, a literal storm, because he was stubborn on that. He went out in the opposite direction on the ship, right? And he was in direct disobedience to God, and so God sent this storm to redirect him. But in this case, with the disciples, they were doing exactly what Jesus told them to do, and they still ended up in a storm. Storms, we need to understand up front, are a part of life. This world is filled with evil. And there are people in this world who do nothing but plot every day to cause as much mayhem as possible. This world is broken, and it's filled with broken people. We can be having a nice, calm day, and all of a sudden, an evil person with evil intentions crosses our path. People unleash storms of violence on each other. There can be storms of lies, storms of unfaithfulness. There can be storms of grief. And on top of all that, there can be personal storms of sickness, storms of unemployment. The boat that you thought was safe to board has now become a nightmare. The company that you thought was secure is now going through layoffs. The person you thought would be there to the end is gone. At times it seems like our Savior is asleep. If he has the power to change something, then why doesn't he? Does he not know what's happening? And that's where the disciples were, with these questions hanging in the air, in the storm, at sea, and they are panicking. They're stressed out. They're anxious, and they thought that they were not going to survive this. And notice that their question to Jesus is, "Do you not care? And we are perishing here." They're thinking, how could someone who loves us let us go through such a terrible thing? Nothing was making sense. In the Old Testament, Job, you recall his story. There's a whole book named after him. He was wondering some of the same things. He had lost his wealth. He lost his family. He lost his health. And he wondered, God, where are you? What did I do to deserve this? And he asked God, please tell me what is happening. And God was just silent. He seemed so distant. So if you have ever been disappointed with God, then you're in good company. The disciples were wondering the same thing, and they were feeling the same disappointment. And here are 3 points that I want to highlight that will help us before we move on. It'll help us get our bearings before we move on with the rest of the story. Number 1, the disciples must not have heard Jesus say that they were going to the other side. I know I've had my fair share of misunderstandings in my life and miscalculations where I heard what I wanted to hear, and I didn't hear what I didn't want to hear. So if Jesus is telling us that we're going to the other side, if that is his destination for us, nothing can stop us. Even when we don't understand why something is happening, doesn't mean that God is no longer in charge. His plans will not be thwarted. We might feel frustrated, but don't forget Jesus' instructions. You are getting to the other side. That's first. Secondly, notice in this whole story, as we read through it, that Jesus didn't question why they woke him up. I would be a little snippy. Just saying. Especially if I was really tired and I was getting some really deep sleep, right? Dreaming. That's good sleep, deep sleep. Don't wake me up from that. But that's just me. Jesus is different. Jesus didn't seem to mind. And we'll see in just a bit that Jesus questions other things, but he doesn't say anything about them waking him up. So if you're feeling troubled, go ahead and wake him up. And by the way, this is all metaphorically speaking, because our God does not sleep. Psalm 121, 1 through 3 says, I look to the hills. Where will I find help? It will come from the Lord who created heaven and earth. The Lord is your protector, and he won't go to sleep or let you stumble. So we need to understand that God stays up so that you don't have to. In the book of Acts, in chapter 12, King Herod had already arrested and killed James, the brother of John. And now, because he saw that pleased the people, Herod had the apostle Peter arrested, and the next day, Peter would be put on trial and more than likely executed as well. So the night before, while he's sitting in the jail cell, what was Peter doing? Was he pacing back and forth? Was he biting his nails? Was he sweating bullets? No, Peter was sound asleep, in such deep sleep that when the angel showed up to rescue Peter, the angel had a hard time waking him up. Imagine, the angel has come all the way from heaven in all of his glory, angelic glory, right? The cell is filled with light, and Peter did not budge. Peter was in such deep sleep that the angel had to poke him in his side. In fact, most versions of the Bible say that the angel struck Peter like, do I have to kick him or what to wake him up? But the point is that Peter was not worried. He was at peace in the middle of his storm. He had already prayed and given it to God. He had all the brothers and sisters praying for him, and he left the outcome in God's hands. And he could do that because, as the psalmist in Psalm 121 said, he said, our God will neither slumber nor sleep. One version says that God doesn't doze or ever get drowsy. So again, for quick review, first, Jesus is getting you to the other side if he said you're going to the other side. Secondly, when we're scared, he doesn't mind you waking him up. And thirdly, notice that Jesus didn't try to minimize the storm. He didn't say, he didn't wake up and see the storm and say, guys, you call this a storm? You should see the hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico. Those are really bad. No, this is my storm. And it's bad. I don't need to compare my storm to yours. Mine was bad. Yours was bad. And all these storms have the same common characteristics. They cause pain. They cause turmoil. They cause trouble. And Jesus could see that this was indeed a dangerous situation that they were in. And so he didn't try to minimize their panic or their desperation. What Jesus had a problem with was their conclusion. Listen, what Jesus had a problem with was their conclusion. They concluded that Jesus didn't care. They had let themselves get paranoid. They were overreacting. They had let their thoughts take them too far. I've been there. Anybody with me on that? Have you ever been there where you just kind of blow things out of proportion? You make things bigger than they really are. You focus so much on the problems just keep getting bigger, and God keeps getting smaller. And so look at how Jesus responded to all of this. It gives so much insight into what to do in this situation. And in verse 39, Mark chapter 4, verse 39 says, and he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Notice how Jesus asks them two questions in response to their first question. This is a big deal right here, because usually when Jesus asks a question, he's driving home a point. He is usually highlighting something, but here he has a double question. So he is like bolding it, underlining it, highlighting it with a highlighter. And so Jesus asks, why are you afraid? And have you still no faith? Jesus is getting down to the heart of the matter. He's asking about fear and faith. There's something about fear and something about faith that they needed to learn. And here's the big picture. Jesus can stop any storm at any time. But that doesn't always happen. There's a story of a hardened old sea captain who did not believe in God. And one night during a storm, he was washed overboard. And some of his men heard him crying out to God for help. And so when they finally rescued him, one of the men said, I thought you didn't believe in God. And the captain answered, he said, well, if there isn't a God, there ought to be one for times like this. And indeed there is. You see, God offers us the hope of a better place. In eternity, there'll be no more storms. In heaven, there'll be no more pain, no more tears. And this world, you and I both know that this world is not heaven. And so as we zoom in here on the picture to a more personal level, the disciples were filled with reverence and fear. They had seen Jesus' miracles. They had seen him heal the sick. They had seen him cast out demons. And now they see him control nature. Not just the sky above. It's a double miracle, really. He controls the sky above and the sea below. Both. The Amplified Bible says, and there was at once a great calm, a perfect peacefulness. It could be translated a mega calm. A violent and as chaotic and violent as the sea was churning before. That's how now it was the opposite of that. And this is a picture of what Jesus gives us. A peace inside of our souls. He may not always stop the storm on the outside, but he can always give us peace on the inside. Mega peace. Philippians 4:7 says, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. It's incomprehensible how that can happen. And he will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. God's peace can guard our hearts. Because by faith we believe that Jesus will get us to the other side, no matter how things may appear right now. Even if the ship that had sunk, if the boat had sunk, Jesus could have had the disciples walk on water if he wanted to. He could have sent a giant fish like he did with Jonah to swallow them up and take them to shore. One way or the other, they were going to make it to the other side. And the boat, listen, the boat you're riding in today is not the most important thing. The thing that you are trusting today is not the most important thing. It might sink. But if you're supposed to get to the other side, you're getting there one way or the other. And this is not the end for you. The ship you left in today may not be how you get to shore tomorrow. Our world may seem like it's spinning in turbulence. We can't control the outcome of our situation. We don't have a say in how things turn out. There are so many things that are out of our control, and it's easy to get frustrated when we can't fight back. We may see that relationship as just a terrible breakup, We might see that injustice as just something that was not fair. We might feel discouraged. We can be tempted to wallow in self-pity, tempted to hold on to our anger, tempted to give in to the bitterness. But if you're going through this, there is something, whatever storm you're going through, there is something about fear and something about faith that we need to learn. We can give in to the fear of our situation, or we can focus on Jesus by faith. God has something to say about our situation. Read the Bible for guidance. Pray for wisdom. Ask brothers and sisters in Christ who have overcome a few storms in their lives for some advice. There's some values that we learn, some principles, kingdom principles, that we can't learn anywhere else. There is a maturity that can grow inside of us because we have weathered the storm. And this is where we trust God to be our Savior. We trust Him to be our justifier. We trust Him to be our defender. Psalm 46:1 says, God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will not fear when the earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. And that's what God is after right there. Where we trust God in the good and we trust God in the bad. And we aren't living to dodge storms, to have a storm-free life. No, we're living to bring glory to God, come what may. When we respond in faith, we get to the point where even in the midst of the storm, even in our confusion, we don't lose our joy. In the middle of it, we don't lose our hope. We begin to understand that the obstacle is really the opportunity to mature. I don't like it. But the fact of the matter is that I've learned more from my hard times than I have from the good times. I don't like it. But that's a fact. 2 Corinthians 4:17 says, for our momentary and light distress, this passing trouble, is producing for us an eternal weight of glory, of fullness, beyond all measure. So we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen. For the things which are visible are temporal, just brief and fleeting, but the things which are invisible are everlasting and imperishable. So when we come out on the other side, your character will be more refined. You'll be one step closer to your dream. You'll understand better that the storms don't last forever. Sometimes it might seem like it, right? When we're caught up in the middle of it, sometimes it might seem like do we have a bullseye on our back or something? There's storm after storm, or like the rain. Will this rain ever end? Especially, like when we're here along the Gulf, when it's hurricane season, meteorologists are tracking the storms, and as they're making their way through the Gulf, they're trying to figure out when and where they will make landfall. And sometimes there are multiple hurricanes brewing in the waters. Sometimes we do take a direct hit here in the coastal bend, and sometimes we don't. But no meteorologist will ever assume that the hurricanes will last forever. That's why they call it hurricane season, because it lasts for a season. They come and they go. Storms are not permanent. Storms pass. So we need to have a mindset that understands that this world is temporary, and our focus is on the eternal. On April 15th, 1912, the Titanic sank to the bottom of the ocean in the cold waters of the North Atlantic. The ship hit an iceberg. What was thought to be an unsinkable ship sunk. And because they were so overconfident, they didn't have enough lifeboats for all the passengers on board. 1,500 people died. Now this ship, the Titanic, was built in Belfast in Northern Ireland. When the people of the city received the news of its sinking, there was weeping and wailing on the streets. Not only had people from the city built the ship, but 16 men from their own town were working as engineers on that boat. Those 16 men were drowned. The following Sunday, the local Presbyterian church was packed with people. The man giving the sermon that day was named Andrew Smith. He opened his Bible to the same story we have read today, and he spoke some profound words. He said this, and I quote, "There was only one vessel in all of history that was truly unsinkable, and that was the little boat occupied by the sleeping Savior." And then he added, "And the only hearts that can weather the storms of life are hearts with Jesus inside." This Jesus is our hope. Even in death, he offers life eternal. Philippians 2:9 says, "Therefore God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father." And as we saw in our story today, even nature bows to his will. And this is what the disciples did not understand on the boat that day. They were confused because they had too low a view of this Jesus. They didn't think bad of him. No, it's that they just didn't think high enough of him. I'll read their question to him again, the first question. It says, "They woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?'" At that point in their relationship with Jesus, teacher is the high honor they gave him. But that wasn't high enough. A simple teacher can't get you to the other side. A simple teacher can't help you through certain storms. A simple teacher can't help you face something this big. You need more. And that's why when Jesus calmed the sea, they asked their next question. They had two questions too. At the very end of the story, they said, they asked, "And who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" And they were beginning to understand that this wasn't just any man. They were beginning to understand more and more that this was the Son of God. This is the Alpha and the Omega, the Creator who stepped into his own creation and became a man. And the reason he did that was out of love for you and me. Colossians 1:19 says, "For God in all his fullness was pleased to live in Christ. And through him God reconciled everything to himself. He made peace with everything in heaven and on earth by means of Christ's blood on the cross." Listen, it may be that you're listening today, maybe here in Texas or anywhere you're listening in this great big world of ours. You're in a tough spot right now. You might feel like you're going to panic. You might feel confused. You need to know that Jesus has not abandoned you. He's in your boat. But you need to go wake him up. Seek him out, and you'll find him. When you seek him with all your heart, pray to him. He is Lord over nature. He is Lord over every storm. And if he doesn't calm it right now, he'll calm you. He can give you a peace that surpasses understanding. And the more you get to know him, the more you trust him, the more you'll realize that there's no need to wait until things get really bad. No, as soon as you see the dark clouds coming, turn to him. When the sun is shining bright, turn to him. And these experiences will build your faith. The disciples were scared to death. But when Jesus stopped the storm, how do you think their faith was increased after that experience? Their faith grew by leaps and bounds. And that's why Jesus has no problem sending us into the middle of storms, because storms are great teachers. Storms give God the opportunity to put his power on display on our behalf. Remembering what God has brought you through is a great faith builder. Some of you listening today are sinking in fear. You're drowning in guilt. The wind of unrest has blown through your soul, and you have no peace. Some have tried to just cope with your life, and it's causing problems. Some of you feel like you're just treading water and getting nowhere. You have to understand that what will happen if you don't do something today. Deep down, you know that you're going to drown in a sea of sin unless someone comes to save you. And that's the good news. That's exactly why Jesus came. He came to give you eternal life. He came to give you victory over death and judgment. And when you cry out to Jesus for help, he will rescue you. Admit your sin, believe that he is the Son of God, and commit your life to him. Let's go to him in prayer together. Father, you are the creator of heaven and earth. And thank you for Jesus. Thank you for caring for us the way that you do. Thank you for loving us while we were still enemies. You sent your only Son to redeem and to rescue us. And for all who are in a storm right now, I pray that you would guard their hearts and their minds, and in Christ Jesus, may they experience your presence and power like never before. And to you be all the glory and honor in Jesus' name. Amen.